Hi everybody, my name's Scott Joseph from Health, Land and Water, and I'm the General Manager for BD and Growth. I'd like to welcome you to Session 3, and Session 3 is about our future catchment and readiness for the Green Olympics. Okay. So the Session 3 is in the form of a panel in front of us here, and I'd like to welcome Pip back and get the party started.
Get the party started.
Parties later. Now the horticulture guys, when you go to the annual conference, last time I was in bed at 4 in the morning. So I do sort of rank all you guys by industries. Beef cattle guys, well, they don't even go to bed. So let's put some partying shoes on tonight and have a good time. And I'll try not to rank you as the most boring bunch of people I ever had beers with on the Brisbane River. Well, welcome back. Hope everyone had a nice afternoon tea and is thinking about which merch they're going to buy when Hugh sets up his little side business. So, delivering on a Green Olympics was a core selling point of Queensland's successful 2032 Olympics and Paralympics bid. In the first instance, there was a lot of talk about reuse, designed to bring the costs for hosting the Olympics down, and reusing and repurposing existing venues and transport was a large part of the reason the early cost estimates for the operational budget of the Brisbane bid were not only balanced but represent some of the lowest in recent times. That said, the infrastructure required is currently being fleshed out and the overall infrastructure cost remains unclear. There's a lot of discussion about how far SEQ will go with the green. Already people are throwing around concepts about the potential for leveraging the green tourism angle, improving the region's attractiveness as an option for tourists looking for sustainable back-to-nature experiences. And that's not only an experience focused on ecological conservation and educating travellers on local environments and natural surroundings. Sustainable tourism can also focuses on travel that has minimal impact on the environment and local communities. And more recently, the Lord Mayor, Adrian Schrinner, has signified his intentions to see the Brisbane River blue. By that he means healthy and thriving and suitable for primary contact. The Lord Mayor recognised the need, therefore, to achieve this will be through investment in the upper catchments on green infrastructure solutions such as the restoration of riverbanks, regenerative land practices and reforestation of gullies and hill slopes. And this type of investment, while likely, I picked up my old glasses this morning. I'm a bit of a wreck today. I've straightened my hair twice and in the end I just gave up and I can't see half of you. So sorry about that. I actually can read. It's just I'm having a bit of trouble. And sometimes when I've got my glasses on, I misread it. So I get 2 newses a day. There's a really racy, sexy, terrible, non-PC one and then the normal news. So anyway. So we're going to be looking at the regenerative land practices and reforestation of gullies and hill slopes, and this type of investment, while likely to be in the hundreds of millions of dollars, will deliver jobs, food security, increase productivity and secure the environment for the next 100 years. And more broadly, if pressure was brought to bear in the right places, hosting the Games could also force our governments into longer-term planning, resulting in broader social goals aimed at sustainability, equity and diversity. So coming out of COVID, it's been suggested the Olympics could provide necessary jobs to stimulate the economy. But the true costs and potential opportunities of hosting the Olympics in 2032 need to be known, and sooner rather than later. So it's important that there are clear considerations in planning to ensure we don't have a legacy of stranded assets. But it raises the question of how much of our planning needed to be in the form of natural capital assets rather than stadiums and wide roads. So what does a Green Olympics look like in South East Queensland and what do we need to do to get there? With the clock now ticking, conversations are well underway about how SEQ stakeholders can work together to deliver the best games and the best future for our region. To get this panel session started, I'd like to invite each of our panellists to the podium to give us their perspective on what a Green Olympics looks like. And first up we have Cameron Costello, who's going to give me a story on Indigenous koala projects for Landline. You heard it here first.
Lovely.
We're locked in?
Yep,
Great,
totally.
thank you. Cameron is the Deputy Chair at Queensland Tourism Industry Council. He's a Quandamooka man from Moreton Bay off the coast of Brisbane. He is the Deputy Chair at Queensland Tourism Industry Council, and a few of you will have come across Cameron in his former position as the CEO for the Quandamooka Thank you. Aboriginal Corporation, and he's Chair of the QTIC Indigenous Working Group, member of the Queensland Koala Advisory Council, soon to be seen on Landline. He's a member of the Healthy Land and Water Indigenous Advisory Committee and a member of the Arts Queensland First Nations Arts and Cultural Panel. That's quite a life you lead.
Boom.
Boom. Okay. I don't think you need to probably come up here with everyone's mic. So, as before, what we did with the other panel, just give us a 2-minute spiel on your views and what you think we can get out of this panel today.
Look, I think I just want to first acknowledge the traditional owners of the land that we're meeting on, the Yagara and Turrbal people, our neighbours of the Quandamooka people, and pay my respects to the elders past, present and emerging, and pay respect to my brothers and that in the room today, and a lot of our environmental elders who have been on this journey together. I think the announcement of the Olympic Games was so significant for First Nations people in southeast Queensland and in Queensland as well. So I remember I was in the Port Office with the Committee for Brisbane and watching it and watching the Premier speak and talking about path to treaty, etc., and the role of First Nations people in the Games. And as Quandamooka people, we'll have be a host First Nation to 4 Olympic venues as well. So for me, there's a moment of trajectory of where we're heading with First Nations people and what we're doing in the environment with knowledge. And next year's the year of a decade of UN Indigenous languages, and there's all this momentum of these different policies and frameworks that are coming together. And I'm making sure on those particular boards and committees that I'm on that we're mobilising to make sure that for everyone's benefit that First Nations people are not just there to do the opening ceremony but actually helping plan and coordinate and getting the social, cultural and economic benefits for the Games that everyone can enjoy. Thank you.
Next up we have Cate Campbell, and at just 16 Cate made her Olympic debut at the 2008 Beijing Games where she claimed 2 bronze medals. She didn't stop there and now holds 23 international gold medals, 1 world record and 3 Commonwealth records. Now the Olympics is coming to town, she's been actively reminding Southeast Queenslanders that hosting the Olympics will help shape Brisbane's identity. She was on the front page of the Courier Mail recently, reminding people that each time a major city hosts an event, it leaves a mark. Something's tangible like infrastructure and some intangible. She says that this is a chance to announce Brisbane to the world. Here's Cate with her 2 minutes so we can get an idea of where she's coming from.
Thank you very much, and as a very proud Queenslander and grew up in Brisbane, I was so excited to hear and to see the announcement of the Brisbane 2032 Olympics, and so excited that my excitement is shared by so many other people. I think that this is an opportunity to announce Brisbane to the world. If you look at the next 2 Summer Olympic Games, they're being held in Paris and in LA. And then it's Brisbane. Like to be listed in and amongst those cities in itself is an incredible achievement, and it's something that we get to showcase to the rest of the world. But we're not just showcasing Brisbane, we're showcasing Southeast Queensland. And I don't even think we're showcasing Southeast Queensland. The possibilities for this Games is endless. It stretches right across Queensland. And I think that's what I'm so excited about. And when people think of Australia, they often think of a place like Sydney. And what's really iconic about Sydney is Bondi Beach, the Harbour Bridge, or the Opera House. But when people think of Brisbane, or when they think of Queensland, they think of the Gold Coast, they think of the Sunshine Coast, they think of the Whitsundays, they think of the Great Barrier Reef. We have such opportunity, not just to showcase Brisbane to the world, but to showcase Queensland to the world, and to put it on the world map and to keep it there. But we want to make sure that it's there for them to enjoy, and that's why there is such a strong focus on it being sustainable. Part of the IOC, when we were presenting to the International Olympic Committee for that bid, one of their things was it has to be sustainable, and we're proving that it is. And for us, we now get to lead the way in sustainability, because we were going to have bipartisan support on this. We have an end date. Let's push through as much sustainable change as we possibly can and be real leaders in sustainability in this country and in the world.
I need to say Brisbane are the leaders, so everyone can get on board.
Thank you, Cate. And loving the rural boots that she's got on. Got a bush chook in our midst.
I'm just waiting for the Tamworth Music Festival to be allowed to happen.
It's because you don't need heels, can I just say?
Next up is Andrew O'Neill, and if it's going to improve the environment or livability of southeast Queensland, Dr Andrew O'Neill is likely to be part of it. He's an expert in sustainable urban water management and water-sensitive urban design, and is recognised globally for his innovative work in building leadership and technical skills in professionals and students. When he's not driving innovation and guiding Healthy Land and Water's talented scientists and engineers as they work to improve southeast Queensland's environment, he can be spotted on two wheels, cycling around our beautiful region and beyond. Andrew, 2 minutes.
Thanks, Pip.
Dream on. Tell us the
Yep.
dream.
I'll tell you the dream. And I want to, can I ask everyone to just indulge me for a second, just close your eyes. So I want you just to imagine for a second, or for, sorry, a minute and a half, that we're not sitting in Customs House in 2021, but it's 2032. The Games have just finished. And according to all the sustainability metrics that have been set, just like Cate said, we've actually succeeded. We actually have had the best, most sustainable games that have ever been seen in the world, and that this we've also swept it up both in the pool and the velodrome, I should say. They're the two parts of the Olympics that I like the most. So we've done very well.
And the equestrian.
Sorry, what's that?
And the equestrian.
And the equestrian. Okay, sure. That too. So we've proven through the metrics that we've measured that we've been really sustainable. We've led the way. We've actually, everyone that's flown into Brisbane and into Australia during that period, they not only offset their carbon credits, but they were made to or actually invested in local carbon credits in southeast Queensland, because the carbon price, of course, has shot up from I think $50 as it is this week to hundreds of dollars, and it's really, really valuable. And also, ecotourism plug, they have gone and visited those projects that they help to fund as a new eco-investment tourism niche product that's available soon and to be marketed on T-shirts by Hugh. So, Prime Minister of Australia, Campbell, Queensland Premier Cameron Costello,
Yeah, right.
Lord Mayor of Brisbane, Krista Adams, and CEO of Brisbane City Council, Tim Wright, all agree that the way we did it was because we were super innovative. We actually, we said what we agreed what we needed to do. We did it. We made it happen, and we're all really proud of that effort because we were successful.
Thank you, Andrew. Tim Wright has had a key role at Brisbane City Council, leading the team that makes Brisbane the wonderful, clean, green and sustainable city that it is. He manages an annual program of over $600 million to deliver improved parks, waterways, bushland, improved air quality and improved resilience of public and private assets. Born and bred in Brisbane, that's good, you've got skin in the game, that's excellent. And he's passionate about the natural areas of SEQ. When he's not transforming the city, you might find him at Victoria Park, where in his spare time he's been the project owner for the transformation of Victoria Park from a golf course into a wonderful new open space for the community and visitors to enjoy. It's not quite up there with zombies, but I don't think anyone's going to top that today. So, Tim, tell us your 2-minute vision for how Brisbane's going to get there.
Yeah, and just on that, the equestrian course will be at Victoria Park. Yeah, so you'll get to see that in 2032. I'm quite practical in my thinking, so I'm thinking, what does a green city look like in 2032? And I think there's probably 4 elements that we're going to have. The first element is what you're going to see. So you're going to walk around the streets, you're going to see a lot more trees. We are already Australia's most biodiverse capital city, Brisbane, so it's something that we're very proud of. But I think this is going to supercharge us to the next level. I think you're going to see a lot more green buildings. There's a lot of architects that are out there now, whether it's your own personal home or whether it's high-rise development. There's a real theme that's coming across at the moment of greenery. So you'll walk through any of these CBD streets or any of the residential areas in Brisbane, and I think you're going to start seeing a lot more green buildings that we haven't seen before. I think there's going to be a love of, or an increased love of moving around with public and active transport and less reliance on cars. I was just trying to, probably a bit the same, Andrew, I was closing my eyes at home last night thinking, what would it look like if I'm here in 2032 as a visitor? Probably staying at a CBD hotel, walking over the new Green Bridge, walking down Main Street to the Gabba, under a new tree-lined boulevard. For the Olympians, I know you don't do swimming and athletics on the same day, but just pretend you did. You'd then catch a train across to the Aquatic Centre at Roma Street, watch the swimming. You could then walk to Victoria Park and watch the equestrian and the BMX. So the idea of movement of people really simply around the city, on bikes, walking, buses, trains, I think we're really going to see that. And then I think there's the things that we won't see in 2032, and it's as Cate said, a climate positive games. So the whole methodology of construction of buildings is going to be very difficult. Recycling of materials, using recycled materials in new buildings, and I think a whole sustainability and a new construction agenda will start by 2032, which is, I'm not big on the word legacy, but it's something I think will be fantastic for our city for a long time to come, because the smartest and most intelligent people are going to be working in Brisbane, if they're not already here now, like we all are. They're going to continue to come here to work on what we're going to see.
Simon's here.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well done.
Can I put in an early bid to be a volunteer in the stables?
We're going to need plenty of volunteers.
Yep.
Come on board.
Great. Excellent. Well, Krista, who do I have to suck up to get this volunteer? Both, okay. Well, Councillor Christa Adams is our last panellist, the Deputy Mayor of the Brisbane City Council, Chair of City Planning and Economic Development.
Missed it by that much.
What?
That's changed, but that's okay.
Okay.
Chair of Brisbane 2032 Brisbane and Paralympic Games.
Okay. That was next.
That was next.
We just buried the lead. Okay. Krista represents the Holland Park ward and is the Deputy Mayor, and has recently been appointed the Civic Cabinet Chair for Economic Development and the Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games Committee. And she has a variety of high-profile roles since she started as a councillor in 2008. Initially taking on the role of Chair of Council, she's been a Civic Cabinet Chair for Lifestyle, Finance and Economic Development, then Public and Active Transport, Economic and Tourism Development. It's like all those jobs have been leading to the latest one. Well, welcome to the panel, Christa, and give us your 2 minutes, starting with I hereby guarantee Pip Courtney a job cleaning out the stables.
Pip, I've got my Brizzy Greeters umbrella today, and can I say the majority of our Brizzy Greeters are Expo 88 volunteers, so it's a thing. It's, volunteers are going to be a very, very big part, and they make the Olympics very sustainable. And I want to follow on from what Tim said, and we're very lucky in Brisbane. One of the reasons I think the IOC was so blown away by our presentation was that we are already carbon neutral and have been carbon neutral for 10 years. And we are very much at the moment writing what the new norm is for the IOC in that climate positive Olympics. Paris is trying as much as they can in that space. LA is really trying to get there as well, but it's mandated for us to be climate positive for 2032. And that's no mean feat, but we will get there. And as Andrew said, one of the biggest ones will be the flights to getting people here. But I don't take the word legacy lightly, because the legacy is the most important part for us in Brisbane City Council. And it is the green and gold runway of what the next 10 years look like. But 2032 Olympics and Paralympic Games is like 3 months. It's the 10 years after that. And what does that do for the city? And that is climate sustainability. It's also economic sustainability, and it's social sustainability. So yes, we'll get the climate right. We've been working on that for years. That's our business as usual. But right now, everybody's eyes are on us. On the night that we were announced as the Olympic City, our Google search went up by 1,500% because everybody went, where the heck's Brisbane? Which is great. That's what we want to see, because if you come here and you visit and you do your ecotourism and you put your money over the counter, that helps local Brisbane businesses, tourism, retail, the whole lot. And that's what makes us sustainable, and that opportunity. And then, of course, more than 80% of our venues are already built. And then we can start looking at how we enhance those, support the local clubs and communities for what it looks like the 10 years after that. And when Brisbane businesses and South East Queensland businesses do well, everybody does well. And that's the excitement we have now with the eyes on the city and the region for the next 20 years.
Thank you very much, Krista. All right, well, let's kick the panel off. I want to start with Andrew. Is there a risk of greenwashing with the Games? And how do you make real and lasting change so that people feel like they actually went to a real green Games?
Yeah, there is a real risk, because that's what's happened at every other Olympics until now. So every other Olympics, I think it was the first time that sustainability really came on the agenda for Olympics was Salt Lake City, or maybe even a bit before that, but it wasn't really talked about much before. But actually, there was I looked up the academic literature, because I'm a reformed academic, and I found a recent paper published in Nature about this. So where they looked at all the sustainability metrics, a bit like the SDGs, but just toned down to something that's a bit more manageable, and they found that the trend of sustainability through since '92 has decreased. So we've been talking more about sustainability, but it's been actually becoming less sustainable. So if that doesn't smell like greenwashing, then I think what else does? That's evidence. So I'd say that's the trend that we've got. So there's every opportunity for us with 10 years, 11 years out to actually do something different, but we need to do something very different. So I'd say that the risk is real of it being greenwash, but I think, as Tim and Krista have said, there is a real commitment, so I think it can be done, but we need to do things quite differently to how they've been done before.
Krista, if Brisbane is already carbon neutral, can't you just take your foot off the pedal and skate into the Olympics and not have to do very much?
Wouldn't that be nice? I've been in council for 13 years and the foot has not come off the pedal at any point of time. No, we're always looking at different ways, and the technology changes so fast. So, and it sounds weird, we're public and active transport. I did have that, as you mentioned, briefly in my portfolio. And unfortunately, in the last 2 years, people have been off their buses and back in cars. And it's been a whole 180 degrees. We were doing so well in 2019. And that's really going to be a struggle to get people back onto the buses. But we're doing everything we can to make that really, really easy. So the electric loop now runs in the CBD. We're trialling that. The metro vehicles are coming online in 2 years' time, which are fully electric. It just needs to become business as usual. And it is, in some areas of council, very much business as usual, but we're always looking at the next step. How do we get computerised sporting fields so they know when to water, so they're not wasting water, they're harvesting and they're knowing when they're watering? How are we doing electric vehicles, green boulevards? And when we're talking about green buildings, it's not just lots of trees on buildings, because that's pretty and that's nice and that's what you see, but it's down to green steel, green concrete, green buildings that breathe, and using that fantastic opportunity we have being in a subtropical city. How do we capture that? Now, that's why the Queenslander was born 120 years ago. Open it up, archways, hallway down the middle and catch the breezes, but why can't you do that on the 20th story of a building as well? So we're looking at all those opportunities, and you may not see it, but we are working on it every day to make sure that it actually happens.
Because, Tim, the world's media will absolutely flay you if they even get a sniff that there's greenwashing or you haven't done much or you don't get there. I mean, it could be international shellacking if you don't get it right. Is that sort of in the back of your mind that there's going to be a report card on you guys at the end of the Olympics, and the politicians and the councillors?
Oh, it's front of mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think...
I'd run now.
As the Deputy Mayor said, we've got a great story to tell already, and that's what helped us get the Brisbane 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games to Brisbane. The foot can't go off the accelerator because the stakeholders who are out there, who are the residents and businesses of Brisbane, they expect that of the local governments now to actually lead sustainability. So we'll continue to buy bushland, we'll continue to build new parks, we'll continue to fix waterways across the city in partnership with Healthy Land and Water, in partnership with other stakeholders. So I don't know, if I was in my role 20 or 30 years ago, I think it's very different to what it is today. Today is about sustainability, it's about resilience. We do have a changing climate. We've got to build assets in a different way that's going to withstand different types of events. It's absolutely front and centre.
Okay, and if I could go to Cate, if you look at the experience from an Olympian, like you were in Beijing, now that was greenwashing, wasn't it? Like the air was clean because they got all the cars off the road and...
They told half the population that you're not allowed to drive for 3 months. Or these are the days of the week that you can drive and these are the other days of the week that you can drive. The air quality still wasn't good. You know, you couldn't see the sun most days. You could only see the sun after it had rained. And there was a real sense that they were doing it just for the games.
For the optics.
For the optics, 100%. And when I look at past Olympics that I've been to, I think that a city that really benefited and came alive from the games was London, and that was because it was so well planned. There was a legacy, and I love this talk of legacy. The part of the bid that we submitted was it was a 10 plus 10 year plan. So it wasn't just the 10 years leading in, it's talking about the 10 years leading out of the games and how these games are going to shape our city. And London did that very well. In all the venues that they built are still used today. They completely changed an area of the city that was quite run down, that was very poor and low socio-economic people were living there, had high crime rates, and they built an Olympic village there, and it's now a really up-and-coming area. They connected it to the London Underground, and they've used it in that way. In a similar way, to completely contrast that, you look at a city like Rio, which was just, I mean, it's such a mistake to give them the Olympic Games, but it was you know, the villages were half built. There were roads that were half built, bridges that just stopped in the middle of nowhere because it was planned, but then they ran out of money. Most of the venues are dilapidated, they are unused. It was a huge tax on the local economy. The public sentiment was really low. They ran out of money, so they stopped paying their contractors, which meant that they poured concrete down the pipes, which meant that all of our toilets overflowed. You know, there were just like so many things that went wrong. But when you look at the opportunity that Brisbane's been given, I think that this is a chance that we can transform this city, and we can transform it for not just the games itself, but for the future 10 years. We have the opportunity to put in so much infrastructure that is going to make it a more accessible city, but it's also going to give us, if we talk of, you know, tourism and all of that, we're going to have test events in the lead up, so we're going to be bringing people and bringing jobs into the city, but post the games as well, because we have this infrastructure which has to be proven that it is going to be used after the Games. There are going to be a few temporary structures, which of course you have to have, but every other structure is going to be here to stay. It's going to be here to attract people from all over the world. So to me, I just think that this is an opportunity to shape our city. I spent 2 years living in Sydney, and it was interesting because 20 years later, people are still talking about those Sydney Olympics and where they were and what it meant to them. And that, you know, we're talking of all the economic benefits. We're not talking about the health benefits that having an Olympic Games brings. If exercise was a pill, it would be the most in-demand medication in the world. And how great that we have an Olympic Games that we can inspire youngsters to get off the couch. They can go and drag their parents outside, to move more, to be healthy, to be active. That relieves some of the strain on our healthcare system and the tax that takes. So look, the possibilities are endless, and I think that we just have to be brave enough and bold enough to go after them. But from my perspective, I think that the most exciting thing about these Games is how it's going to change this city, but also the mark that it's going to leave on the people. You know, it's going to leave a permanent mark in the infrastructure, but it's going to leave a permanent mark on the people here as well.
Thank you, Cate. Prime Minister, can you just be that now, please? Cameron, what do you think about you? So you've come to the Olympics, you've watched the Australians scoop the pool in equestrian and swimming. What about ecotourism, and what happens if the extinction date for our most iconic animal, the koala, which is only 20 years before it's extinct?
Yeah.
You don't reckon the world media will give us an absolute thrashing when they come here and find out that you have to go to a park to see a koala?
I think there's a couple of things where, in that announcement of the Games, like when the eyes of the world are upon us in 10, 11 years' time, are there going to be any koalas left in southeast Queensland?
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Of course, yes, there will.
We're actually getting more.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So these are, you know, how is it going to look at our relationship with First Nations people? And those are sort of critical questions. And of course, they're going to be all positive answers. But for me, that triggered my sort of thinking about what is the strategy to mobilise all of our, you know, community, government, industry together to address those issues, which are really critical. So coming up with innovative and creative ideas around it, you know, in terms of koalas, I just think it's a no-brainer that Borrabee hands the baton over to his koala cousin, who's going to be one of the Olympic mascots, and she will be a scientist in the Moreton Bay area, and there will be a 10-year journey where she will be educating people and highlighting the plight of her own species as the koala. So I think there's those. I actually think there should be five mascots of threatened species that have these personas that go forward in terms of taking forward agendas and help bring the public along, and in our education systems as well. From a First Nations perspective, and Krista helped launch our First Nations whale watching tours, which
awesome.
have been on hiatus because of COVID, but
Started off so great though, it's fantastic.
yeah, so I mean, nowhere else I know of that you can get on a boat and travel with the First Nations guides and go across the beautiful ocean or beautiful waterways to see whales and koalas and sand islands in one day, and that's pretty amazing. So we're now looking with the Queensland Tourism Industry Council. We've got a First Nations tourism plan. We're looking at all these other avenues that we can mobilise and look at how we work together with government and industry to create these unique products. So when people are coming to Brisbane and southeast Queensland, there's actually a connectivity and there's product development for those eco-cultural, I call them, it's almost education tourism, because we are on a path of truth-telling as well. I just think that it is, it's going to come back to caring for country, because my cousin Shannon talked about the stories of the river, and our identity is when we talk about the city's identity, it's entrenched in our First Nations stories and history, and caring for that, caring for country, caring for culture, and caring for people, and that's going to be critical to our identity. And the Prime Minister will back us, and I'll be Premier by then, and you'll be the Lord Mayor, and I'll call up and say, hey, Prime Minister Campbell, Brisbane Live, we're catching up with the Lord Mayor again this week for Brisbane Live.
Brisbane Live.
She's got a corporate box. You two still playing?
Harvey will be in for that one too, Cameron.
Yeah.
Well, Cameron, the SDG goal number 11 is about making cities and human settlements inclusive, safe, resilient and sustainable. So if we look at inclusivity, how do you, the people that you speak to in the Indigenous world, are they excited? Do they feel like by the time the Olympics is on that there will be an inclusivity and that it's going to be a good time for them?
Yeah, and I think the last
Lots of opportunities.
The last thing we want is protests in 20. And I remember distinctly watching the 2000 Olympics and Cathy, destroying the opposition, and then we had Yothu Yindi in the closing ceremony singing Treaty, and here we are 21 years later without a treaty. So I'm hoping that this will trigger some of those things, and we're on a path to treaty, and we have those sorts of things sorted. But we did our week of tourism a couple of weeks ago, and we had Destination IQ, which is the peak Indigenous tourism forum, and we had a plenary session with Kerry Peterson, who was the secret weapon that went with the Premier, to look at a plenary session around First Nations involvement in the Olympic Games. And so that was so well attended. First Nations people, we had a whole range of different themes of how we can be involved. It was called Beyond Sport, how we unlock the potential. And through, caring for country and all these other opportunities, that First Nations people actually want to be part of planning and coordinating the games and helping delivering a successful games. And that is about sharing knowledge, sharing information, collaborating. And we've got beautiful people in this city and really good relationships, and we need to keep those going and working and collaborating together, like Healthy Land and Water does. Is a great relationship with First Nations. That's about engagement and inclusivity, which we're looking at those things. Yeah.
Christa, under the IOC's new norm, future Olympics and Paralympic Games have to be not just carbon neutral, but carbon positive. How hard is being carbon positive compared to carbon neutral? Is that just a quantum leap in degree of difficulty?
Look, and there's a lot of work being done on this, I can assure you, a lot of work, particularly in Tim's area under natural environment and water sustainability. And we are extremely comfortable in what we're doing in Brisbane, that we'll not even reach, but we'll go way beyond what they are expecting. And I think that's, again, as I said before, why they were quite surprised in our presentation as well. So there's a lot of quid pro quos and caveats and everything like that, but I'm kind of with Andrew. I mean, if they're not going to count the people that fly over here, we do need to work on the people that fly over here, whether they're athletes, parents, supporters, coaches, or just tourists, that they're offsetting that carbon neutral. I have to say that was the thing with COP27. It's very nice to talk about it, but they all flew there in their private jets. And so there's the side of that you've got to think about it too, which we don't have control over. But we are very, very comfortable that we'll hit those targets and go beyond that, just in what we're doing as business as usual. And the fact that we're not building a whole lot of new stadiums and events as well. So that's very much part of the new norm when it comes to sustainability. And as Cate said, there's venues we're not going to need. So the International Media Centre, we need it. There's more media people that turn up for the Olympics than there are athletes. It's an enormous part of the Olympics. And at an International Media Centre over at Kurilpa at the moment, and we're in negotiations, council at the moment, for the Visi site, will be spectacular for the Games and right in the heart of it, because 80% of the events are in 5Ks of the CBD. But we don't need that afterwards. And that then turns into South Bank 2.0, Kurilpa Parklands, and the opportunities there for green space, again, on the south side of the river in the heart of the city, like we haven't seen since Expo 88. So we're very comfortable that, yes, there's a lot of pressure to get it right, because there will be a report card and we will be marked, but we're confident that we can get one of those future cars that get really high up there, Julie, around the B's plus A's. No, we go for an A+, Cate. Don't we always go for an A+, Cate?
Always go for an A+.
I think I always gave you A's.
Well, Tim, in 10 and a bit years, it will probably be hotter here. So how do you plan to deal with, perhaps it might be a really hot time of year?
Yeah, it's interesting because a lot of people say the Olympics are only on, I think it's late July to early August when the Summer Olympics.
It's actually winter.
It's winter for us. But as the Deputy Mayor said, there are, and Cate said it as well, there are lead-up events that are going to be in Brisbane years and years before. So For those people who think, oh yeah, it's only for sort of 3 months of the Olympics and Paralympics, no, it's not. We will have new visitors to our city for a long period of time leading up to it. So yeah, a change in climate or an increase in temperature, it's globally acknowledged that that's what it's going to be. But I go back to the fundamentals as to what we're doing in Brisbane City Council. Like, we are planting more trees. We've bought, I think it's nearly 4,500 hectares through the Bushland Acquisition Program since 1990, and that's a lot of them's old farmland or other types of land. We're actually planting a lot more trees. We've got over 300 hectares today that's under maintenance and being planted out for offset planting. I touched on it earlier. We'll continue to plant more boulevards. I think we're going to see a demand from the stakeholders, is what I call them, which is the community, that they're wanting to get around the city quicker and easier, and maybe not so much in a car. So we're going to have the metro, we're going to have Cross River Rail, we're going to have other types of public and active transport that all those things are going to contribute. I think we've got the highest number of solar panels in Australia here in southeast Queensland. So, and I know for council, we've got nearly 3 megawatts of solar on council facilities now. So depots, buildings, libraries, things like that. So I don't think there's a silver bullet to this, but I think what there is lots of little things that individuals can do, that governments can do, that businesses can do. I talk to a lot of businesses and they're craving out to go, well, what can I do now to be more sustainable in my business? So for any entrepreneurs out there, I think there's a real market in that at the moment, is that businesses want to latch onto this, but they actually don't know what to do. How do I reduce my carbon footprint? Growth in accountants that have 2 systems, a monetary system and a carbon system. That's a real growing industry at the moment as well. So yeah, I certainly think we're going to do our bit to address heat here in the city, because it's not just on that time of the event, it's back to the legacy as well going forward. Yeah,
because 5 months later it will be hot.
Yeah.
The athletes and the tourists will have gone home,
Yep.
so you want to...
But the media are going to be here they're going to be here January through our summer storm season. So we don't want the city under flood. We don't want buildings falling over. So not that we can control that, but the infrastructure we build between now and then needs to take that into account, that it is resilient. Yeah, so because the last thing we want is the media.
You don't want topsoil in the river making it brown.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I don't know if we want it blue, but lighter brown would be nice. I don't know if we can get it blue, but lighter brown would be nice.
Well, Andrew O'Neill, if I could ask you, so in this drive to have a green Olympics, how does South East Queensland benefit beyond when the Olympic closing ceremony has happened? I'm thinking wider outside Brisbane.
Yeah. I'm thinking the whole region.
Yep.
I hear what you're saying. Like, we can't control the weather, but what we can do, and we're proving again and again, is that when we plant trees in the upper catchment and we invest in the upper catchment, Brisbane does it. Invests outside your boundaries to get an outcome for the city as well. So when we restore the riparian areas or the vegetation along our waterways around the whole region, we actually we reduce the impacts of flooding. We don't stop flooding, but we reduce it, sometimes just by a small amount, and you can prevent flooding in hundreds or thousands of homes just from that investment. Then you get potentially overlaid, and I showed before, I'm going to pitch again, that the future card concept is that layer upon layer you can say, I know Hugh and I have talked about stacked benefits. You know, you can stack. You can say, we get koala benefit because we plant koala trees by waterways. We get a flooding benefit. We get a sediment benefit because you're holding it in the catchment. So more of that, please. I want to see. We've done that well. We've proven it works. Let's do hundreds and thousands of kilometres of waterways. That's what we need to do. But it's going to take all of us. Like, it's not just a few people doing a few projects here and there. We've done some kilometres. We need to do thousands of kilometres. So I'm making a pitch for 232 kilometres by 2032. So, and we can do that. If you think about 232 kilometres of waterway, that's doable. That's 23 kilometres a year. So let's.
Cate swims out for training every morning.
Let's do it. But that will take. It doesn't just take people out there planting trees and stuff. It takes the science. It takes people like Melissa who are talking about the investment that's required. You need to get the money in. You need to make it all work. For everyone who's investing. So whatever needs you have as an investor, if it's a social or an economic, cultural benefit, that those benefits you can then put on your balance sheet for your board or whatever. So I think bring the science together with the boardrooms, together with the people out there planting trees.
And if you have do some accounting, what about the biodiversity accounting? Like the council could just go and buy a heap of offsets somewhere instead of actually making meaningful change. So is biodiversity something, as well as water quality and planting more trees, biodiversity, and you and I, we like talking about koalas, but there are lots of other animals as well. How important is it that some goals are kicked in that area as part of this drive to have green games?
It's so important, and well, I can just tell you, yes, I can agree with you and say it's important, but it's also easy because you can pay for one thing and you get 4 things. So why don't we do that? Why don't we say, instead of saying, it's like stormwater, you put it in a pipe and you send it out to the river and it's gone and then done. Single-use infrastructure. The days are gone of single-use infrastructure long ago. We want infrastructure that, green infrastructure does it really, really well. It does sediment, flood reduction, koalas, platypus, microinvertebrates, fish. We can stop the tilapia, that Rod talked about earlier. It's here. We've got it. We've got the science. We know how to do it. Let's just make it happen.
Cate, will athletes be leveraging their profiles to talk about Brisbane and the Green Games and talk about sustainability, biodiversity, climate change?
Sustainability is becoming much more of a passion for a lot of athletes, and I sit on the Australian Olympic Council Athletes Commission, and it's one of the things that we are driving and working with the AOC on, and we're really pushing it because athletes are telling us how important it is. And an Olympic Games, and I struggle sometimes with the waste that goes into an Olympic Games. There's so many single-use water bottles. All our uniform comes in packaging, and it's all plastic. And there are really simple, easy ways that we can make this more sustainable. And I think that sometimes the enemy of sustainability is the relationship between cost and time, because if we don't have enough time, it's going to cost a lot. But now we do have enough time. We have enough time to put in really good foundations to build on what a sustainable games looks like from an infrastructure point of view, but then also just from practical operational point of views. Can we get our uniform supplies? Can it be a mandate that the International Olympic Committee puts out to all uniform suppliers of all uniforms for all countries, that all the packaging has to be completely biodegradable? Can it be a mandate that the water bottles that are in use during the Olympic Games, can it be a mandate that all of those have to be from recycled plastics? Like, there are real, tangible, actionable changes that we can implement and that we can be leaders in. And I'm not an economist, and lots of much smarter people than me in the room are going to solve the problem of sustainable infrastructure or protecting our waterways and all of that. But as an athlete and being in a position where we can push for some changes that are within our power, it's something that the Australian Athletes Commission is really, really working on, and we're pushing through the AOC, and then we've just had an athlete elected onto the IOC Athletes Commission as well, and they can drive it from that point as well. So I think that it's really refreshing. Sometimes we think that we don't have the power, but I think that if we are looking at our government and our leaders and expecting them to change, then we have to be willing to look at ourselves and think, hey, what am I doing? What am I changing? Am I going on my shopping fast fashion? Am I using takeaway containers all the time? What is my expenditure? Because the last thing I'd like to be called is a hypocrite. And if I'm looking for change, and if I'm pointing at other people and at governments and saying, hey, you need to change, I need to point at myself and say, hey, I need to change. And it's something that I think that we all have a responsibility to do.
And do the uniforms that you wear, I mean, obviously you can't have, well, maybe they will have invented them by then, wool bathers. I'm Tasmanian, did I just give that away?
Togs.
Yeah, okay.
Togs.
I knew as soon as I said it. I mean, we've got wool and cotton growers, some of the best wool growers in the world and some of the best cotton growers in the world here. Are all the uniforms, apart from bathers, made from natural fibres?
And again, that's something that we can push for and something that we can agitate for. And I think if we extend it out to an inclusivity point of view, part of the Australian uniform this year had Indigenous artwork on it, and that was the most popular piece of uniform. And right through the Olympic Village, there was a huge emphasis placed on inclusion and recognising First Nations people and their connection to country and land and water. And so there are so many different elements that we can draw in and piggyback onto this. But yeah, it has to happen on a big level as well, but it also has to happen from the bottom up, and so we can hopefully converge and meet in the middle.
Tim, I grew up in Tasmania, so I don't know what South Bank looked like before Expo, but all the natives just say it completely blew everyone's mind and completely changed the city. Can you and Krista make that happen again?
Yeah, absolutely.
You were too young to remember.
Yeah, no, I was thinking back. Expo 88, I think I was in grade 7 at school.
Okay, you can go away now.
But I remember it from if you talk about legacies, I remember that my dad used to work in the city. We'd catch the train in from Mitchelton every Friday afternoon, meet Dad in the city and walk across to Expo 88. And we had was it the season pass, whatever it was called. We can definitely do it again.
Just the pride that it generated. Like, are you anticipating that will?
Yeah,
I know
absolutely.
we're here to talk about everything green, but if you want to have a happier community, one of those tiles up there, I'm sure would.
I think people will be very proud of the city that they live in. They'll want to host family and friends that want to come and visit the games and want to show off their city. And as Cameron mentioned, I think there's going to be a real growth in tourism, and Cate mentioned it as well, a growth in tourism opportunities for our city. A lot of people don't think of Brisbane as a location. We've got food and drinks and nightlife, and that does normally quite well. But people want to come here for product and experience our natural areas and experience going out on the Moreton Bay or Mongalpin on Moreton Island or up to Mount Cootha and do a bushwalk out there. And I think they're the types of things that are going to change in our city, that are going to make ambassadors or people of our city even prouder of the city that they live in, that, oh yeah, come to Brisbane, come and stay at my place and I'll take you out. On the day you're not going to the games, these are the other things. So I'm really keen to see what's going to come from that, and they're going to be things that we'll continue to have post the games.
And Cameron, the Indigenous involvement in the greening of South East Queensland, do you want that to just get turbocharged between now and the Olympics?
How can
you be involved?
Yeah. Well, already we're involved, because if you look at Brisbane City, the landmass, Mulgumpin, which is Moreton Island, is part of that, and I think it's about 8% of Brisbane. And if you look at the Redlands, Minjerribah, North Stradbroke Island is almost a third of the landmass of Redlands, and that's our country. So we own that, we're the traditional owners. So we're already in the space of, and they're protected area estates too. So we're already doing that. We're already managing country. We've got ranger programs. So in terms of the First Nations involvement in getting the environment ready for the games, we're already there. And I think whether it's protected, threatened species, or whatever, we're already actively doing that, whether it's through monitoring or actively in there. I think that's expanding that, turbocharging it. Yep, definitely. I think this is the year of Indigenous tourism in Queensland. So at our conference where the tourism minister was, he stole my line at the end of it, which was, I said to him that as the year of Indigenous tourism finishes, so begins the decade of investment in Indigenous tourism.
Well, I might steal that, story.
But we've got to look at that from a whole range of different things, right? So we could say eco-cultural tourism. So, we now need to start embarking on those 10-year, and it's about mobilising and being strategic with community, industry and government in those different areas. From a First Nations perspective, we're already in that space in terms of managing lands. I think there's collaborations with other landholders and coordinating. Everything that happens up the river flows out into our sea country. So we're always worried about that, but there's such a great enthusiasm, and Queenslanders generally are just great in times of challenge. We all come together. We have that state of origin type feel, whether it's the environment or whatever. Queenslanders are just we're strong, resilient, and we never give up or we never give in. And I think that's what instills faith in me that we'll be able to take it and turbocharge it.
And as Cate would know,
Yeah.
deadlines,
they
do concentrate the mind, don't they? So the deadline,
yep.
is that helping?
And I think that sense of identity, like Shannon, we need to elevate those stories. So we're all custodians of country. We're all custodians of those stories. So when you think of that, from Bora rings to Olympic rings, traditional Indigenous games to modern games, and from being a city that had a history of boundaries and bounds to being a city without limits, that's where we should be heading together.
And Krista, how do you ensure that there's political... Krista, governments could change, councils could change between now and the Olympics. How do you ensure that the political will and the drive to follow the plans that you guys are all totally on board with are followed?
Well, it's been a long journey to get to here. It was 6 years ago when Graham Quirkford first came up with this idea, and we had different governments then, and they weren't on board then, but they are now. But I think July 21 this year did actually change the focus, and it's a laser focus between the three layers of government now. And I don't see that changing between now and 2032. So it's very exciting. The setting up of OCOG legislation through before Christmas, and then in the next 6 months we'll see the independents, etc., that will be involved in OCOG. And I think that governing body, and it's not going to be called BOCOG, because Beijing was BOCOG beside anything else, but Beijing was BOCOG. I keep saying BROCOG. BROCOG would be a good one, but we'll wait and see. I think it'll be Brisbane Organising Committee. That will be the body, and governments will change and politicians will change and go, but I think, as Cameron said, we've got that state of origin feel now, and we're all laser focused on 2032, and it's really, really exciting. Can I say, we do work very closely with our First Nations, and in Brisbane marketing, we've been working for years on Indigenous product and tourism. And who was the winners the other night? Tourism Awards, the Spirit of the Red Sands, and all the work that we've done with all of those groups to make sure that the stories are being told. Very important part of it. But I think you need to recognise too that you probably haven't noticed maybe, but it's called the 2032 Brisbane and Paralympic Games. And that is the first games ever that the Paralympics are set in the title as mandated. So never had that before in the other Olympics. And I've learned a lot about the Olympics and Paralympic Games in the last 12 months. And the Olympic Games and the Paralympic Games are two very different organisations and two very different events. But Brisbane, and with the Premier backing, has said, no, we are the Olympics and the Paralympics Games. So that's the extra inclusivity for us. It is about making sure they're all included, and it is all, the two events together are the focus for us as well.
Okay. 2 minutes. Well, you've all been very thought-provoking and very positive, which is fantastic. And let's hope that this new regime that you've dreamt, I mean, if you throw it out to the universe, Andrew, doesn't it just happen?
I hope so.
Yeah, okay.
No, it doesn't. You have to work for it. Come on.
Kate knows about work.
Yes.
Yeah. But we all know carb loading and tapering are the best parts of training, aren't they?
Oh, very true. Very true.
Right.
But we've got a long way to go before we can start carb loading.
I know.
We've got a lot of dieting before we get to that
10
point.
years before we can carb load, hey?
Well, you're all very patient people. It's going to take how many months, how many days before it all happens? Look, thank you for your insight, and thank you for listening so well. It's the afternoon and everyone's really engaged, which is great. And I'm sorry we don't, because they were so fabulous, we don't have time for any questions, but we'll have a few drinks later on at dinner and you can nab them there. So please put your hands together for our amazing panel.